Welcome back to Whispers in the Ash, where the embers still glow with forgotten secrets, and the truth is rarely what it seems. Last time, we walked the rotting, salt-crusted streets of Innsmouth. We witnessed the unsettling deformity known as the Innsmouth Look and felt the heavy, oppressive gaze of the locals. Desperate for answers, we sought out the one man rumored to know the town's dark history, the erratic octogenarian Zadok Allen. We left off just as we secured a bottle of whiskey, the only key capable of unlocking his silence. The whiskey has been poured, and the shadows are growing long. Old Zadok is ready to speak, but the tale he weaves is not one for the faint of heart. The smoke has cleared, and the pieces are starting to align. Let's begin. I had been assured that the old man could do nothing but hint at wild, disjointed, and incredible legends, and I had been warned that the natives made it unsafe to be seen talking with him. Yet the thought of this aged witness to the town's decay, with memories going back to the early days of ships and factories, was a lure that no amount of reason could make me resist. Curiosity flared up beyond sense and caution, and in my youthful egotism, I fancied I might be able to sift a nucleus of real history from the confused, extravagant outpouring I would probably extract with the aid of whiskey. A quart bottle of such was easily, though not cheaply, obtained in the rear of a dingy variety store just off the square in Elliott Street. Re-entering the square, I saw that luck was with me, for shuffling out of Payne Street around the corner of the Gilman house, I glimpsed nothing less than the tall, lean, tattered form of old Zadok Allen himself. In accordance with my plan, I attracted his attention by brandishing my newly purchased bottle, and soon realized that he had begun to shuffle wistfully after me as I turned into Waite Street on my way to the most deserted region I could think of. Before I reached Main Street, I could hear a faint and wheezy, "Hey, mister," behind me, and I presently allowed the old man to catch up and take copious pulls from the quart bottle. I began putting out feelers as we walked along to Water Street and turned southward amidst the omnipresent desolation and crazily tilted ruins, but found that the aged tongue did not loosen as quickly as I had expected. At length, I saw a grass-grown opening toward the sea between crumbling brick walls, with the weedy length of an earth and masonry wharf projecting beyond. Piles of moss-covered stones near the water promised tolerable seats, and the scene was sheltered from all possible view by a ruined warehouse on the north. About 4 hours remained for conversation if I were to catch the 8 o'clock coach for Arkham, and I began to dole out more liquor to the ancient tippler, meanwhile eating my own frugal lunch. In my donations, I was careful not to overshoot the mark, for I did not wish Zadok's vinous garrulousness to pass into a stupor. After an hour, his furtive taciturnity showed signs of disappearing, and something or other had caused his wandering gaze to light on the low, distant line of Devil Reef, then showing plainly and almost fascinatingly above the waves. He bent toward me, took hold of my coat lapel, and hissed out some hints that could not be mistaken. "Thar's whar it all begun. That cursed place of all wickedness whar the deep water starts. Gate o' hell. Sheer drop down to a bottom no surroundin' line can tech. Old Cap'n Obed done it. Him that found out more'n was good for him in the South Sea Islands. Never was nobody like Cap'n Obed, old limb o' Satan. Heh heh heh. I can mind him a-tellin' about furrin parts and callin' all the folks stupid for goin' to Christian meetin' and bearin' their burdens meek and lowly. Says they'd orter get better gods like some of the folks in the Ingies. Gods as 'ud bring 'em good fishin' in return for their sacrifices and 'ud really answer folks' prayers. Matt Elliott, his fust mate, talked a lot too, Only he was again folkses doing any heathen things. Told about an island east of Othahite where they was a lot of stone ruins older than anybody knew anything about. Kinda like them on Penape in the Carolines, but with carvings of faces that looked like the big statues on Easter Island. They was a little volcanic island near Thar too, where they was other ruins with different carvings. Ruins all wore away like they'd been under the sea wonxt, and with pictures of awful monsters all over 'em. Wall, sir, Matty says the natives around there had all the fish they could catch, and sported bracelets and armlets and head rigs made out of a queer kind of gold and covered with pictures of monsters just like the ones carved over the ruins on the little island. Sorter fish-like frogs or frog-like fishes that was drawed in all kinds of positions like they was human beings. Nobody could get out of them where they got all the stuff, and all the other natives wondered how they managed to find fish in plenty even when the very next islands had lean pickings. Matt, he got to wondering too, and so did Cap'n Obed. Obed, he notices, besides, that lots of the handsome young folks would drop you out of sight for good from year to year, and that they won't many old folk around. Also, he thinks some of the folks looks derned queer even for Kanakis. It took Obed to get the truth out of them heathens. I don't know how he done it, but he begun by trading for the gold-like things they wore. Asked 'em where they come from, and if they could get more, and finally wormed the story out of the old chief. Wallachia, they called him. Nobody but Obed had ever believed the old yeller devil, but the Captain Cud read folks like they was books. Heh heh. Nobody never believes me now when I tell 'em, and I don't suppose you will, young feller. Though come to look at ye have kinda got them sharp redden eyes like Obed had. The old man's whisper grew fainter, and I found myself shuddering at the terrible and sincere portentousness of his intonation, even though I knew his tale could be nothing but drunken fantasy. Wall, sir, Obed he larnt that they's things on this arth as most folks never heard about, and wouldn't believe if they did hear. It seems these Kanakis was sacrificing heaps of their young men and maidens to some kind of god things that lived under the sea, and getting all kinds of favors in return. They met the things on the little islet with the queer ruins, and it seems them awful pictures of frogfish monsters was supposed to be pictures of these things. Maybe they was the kind of critters as got all the mermaid stories and such started. They had all kinds of cities on the sea bottom, and this island was heaved up from Thar. Seems they was some of the things alive in the stone buildings when the island come up sudden to the surface. That's how the Kanakis got wind they was down thar. Made sign talk as soon as they got over being skeert, and pieced up a bargain afore long. Them things liked human sacrifices, had 'em ages afore, but lost track of the upper world arter a time. What they done to the victims, it ain't for me to say, and I guess Obed wa'n't none too sharp about asking. But it was all right with the heathens, because they'd been having a hard time and was desperate about everything. They give a sartain number of young folks to the sea things twict every year, May Eve and Halloween, reg'lar as could be. Also give some of the carved knickknacks they made. What the things agreed to give in return was a plenty of fish. They druv 'em in from all over the sea, and a few gold-like things now and then. When it come to mattin' with them toad-looking fishes, the Kanakis kinda balked, but finally they larnt something as put a new face on the matter. Seems that human folks has got a kinda relation to sech water beasts, that everything alive come out of the water want, and only needs a little change to go back again. Them things told the Kanakis that if they mixed bloods there'd be children as 'ud look human at fust, but later turn more and more like the things, till finally they'd take to the water and jine the main lot of things down there. And this is the important part, young feller. Them as turned into fish things and went into the water wouldn't never die. Them things never died, except they was kilt violent. Wall, sir, It seems by the time Obed knowed them islanders, they was all full of fish blood from them deep water things. When they got old and begun to show it, they was kept hid until they felt like taking to the water and quitting the place. Some was more teched than others, and some never did change quite enough to take to the water. But mostly they turned out just the way them things said. Them as was born more like the things changed Arlie, but them as was nearly human sometimes stayed on the island till they was past 70, though they'd usually go down under for trial trips afore that. Folks as had took to the water generally come back a good deal to visit, so's a man 'ud often be a-talkin' to his own 5 times great-grandfather who'd left the dry land a couple of 100 years or so afore. Everybody got out of the idea dyin', except in canoe wars with the other islanders, or as sacrifices to the sea gods down below, or from snake bite or plague or sharp gallopin' ailments or something afore they could take to the water, but simply looked forward to a kind of change that wa'n't a bit horrible arter a while. They thought what they'd got was well with all they'd had to give up, and I guess Obed kinda come to think the same hisself when he chewed over old Wallachaiah's story a bit. Wallachaiah, though, was one of the few as hadn't got none of the fish blood, being of a royal line that intermarried with royal lines on other islands. Wallachaiah give him a funny kind of thing-umajig made out of lead or something, that he said'd bring up the fish things from any place in the water where they might be a nest of 'em. The idea was to drop it down with the right kind of prayers and sech. Wallachaiah allowed as was the things was scattered all over the world, so's anybody that looked about could find a nest and bring 'em up if they was wanted. Matt, he didn't like this business at all, and wanted Obed Shud keep away from the island, but the captain was sharp for gain, and found he could get them gold-like things so cheap it'd pay him to make a specialty of 'em. Things went on that way for years, and Obed got enough of that gold-like stuff to make him start the refinery in Waite's old run-down fullin' mill. Wall come about 38 when I was 7-year-old. Obed he found the island people all wiped out between viages. Seems the other islanders had got wind of what was going on and had took matters into their own hands. Suppose they musta had, arter all. Them old magic signs as the sea thing says was the only things they was afeard of. No tellin' what any of them Kanakis will chance to get a holt of when the sea bottom throws up some island with ruins older'n the deluge. Pious cusses these was. They didn't leave nothin' standin' on either the main island or the little volcanic islet except what parts of the ruins was too big to knock down. That naturally hit Obed pretty hard, seeing as his normal trade was doing very poor. It hit the whole of Innsmouth too, because in seafaring days what profited the master of a ship generally profited the crew proportionate. Most of the folks around the town took the hard times kinda sheep-like and resigned, but they was in bad shape because the fishin' was peterin' out and the mills weren't doing none too well. Then's the time Obed he begun a cursin' at the folks for being dull sheep and prayin' to a Christian heaven as didn't help 'em none. He told 'em he'd knowed of folks as prayed to gods that give something ye really need, and says if a good bunch of men 'ud stand by him, he could maybe get a holt of sartin powers as 'ud bring plenty of fish and quite a bit of gold. Here the old man faltered, mumbled, and lapsed into a moody and apprehensive silence, glancing nervously over his shoulder and then turning back to stare fascinatedly at the distant black reef. When I spoke to him, he did not answer, so I knew I would have to let him finish the bottle. He licked its nose and slipped it into his pocket, then beginning to nod and whisper softly to himself. I bent close to catch any articulate words he might utter, and thought I saw a sardonic smile behind the stained, bushy whiskers. Yes, he was really forming words, and I could grasp a fair proportion of them. Poor Matt. Matt he Alice was agin it, tried to line up the folks on his side, and had long talks with the preachers, no use. They run the congregational parson out of town, and the Methodist feller quit. Never did see resolved Babcock, the Baptist parson, again, wrath o' Jehovah. I was a mighty little critter, but I heard what I heard and seen what I seen, Dagon and Ashtoreth, Belial and Beelzebub, golden calf and the idols of Canaan and the Philistines, Babylonish abominations, Mene, Tekel, Upharsin. He stopped again, and from the look in his watery blue eyes, I feared he was close to a stupor after all. But when I gently shook his shoulder, he turned on me with astonishing alertness and snapped out some more obscure phrases. Don't believe me, hey? Heh. Then just tell me, young feller, why Cap'n Obed and 20-odd other folks used to row out to Devil Reef in the dead of night and chant things so loud you could hear 'em all over town when the wind was right. Tell me that, hey? And tell me why Obed was allus droppin' heavy things down into the deep water t'other side of the reef where the bottom shoots down like a cliff lower'n ye can sound. Tell me what he done with that funny-shaped lead thingamajig as Wallachia give him. Hey, boy? The watery blue eyes were almost savage and maniacal now, and the dirty white beard bristled electrically. Old Zadok probably saw me shrink back, for he began to cackle evilly. Heh. Beginning to see, hey? How about the night I took my pa's ship's glass up to a cupola and seed the reef a-bristling thick with shapes that dove off quick soon's the moon riz. Obed and the folks was in a dory, but them shapes dove off the far side into the deep water and never come up. How'd you like to be a little shaver alone up in a cupola a-watchin' shapes as want human shapes? Hey? Huh. The old man was getting hysterical, and I began to shiver with a nameless alarm. He laid a gnarled claw on my shoulder, and it seemed to me that its shaking was not altogether that of mirth. Suppose one night ye seed something heavy heaved off in Obed's dory beyond the reef, and then larned next day a young feller was missing from home. Hey? Did anybody ever see hide or hair a Hiram Gilman again? Did they? And Nick Pierce, and Llewellyn Waite, and Adoniram Southwick, and Henry Garrison? Hey. Heh. Wall, sir, that was the time Obed begun to get on his feet again. Folks see his 3 darters a-wearing gold-like things as nobody'd never see on 'em afore, and smoke started comin' out of the refinery chimbley. Other folks was prosperin' too. Fish began to swarm into the harbor fit to kill, and heaven knows what sized cargoes we begun to ship out to Newburyport, Arkham, and Boston. 'Twas then Obed got the old branch railroad put through. Remember, I ain't sayin' Obed was set on heaven things just like they was on that Kanaki Isle. I don't think he aimed at fust to do no mixin', nor raise no young'uns to take to the water and turn into fishes with eternal life. He wanted them gold things, and was willin' to pay heavy, and I guess the others was satisfied for a while. Come in 46, the town done some lookin' and thinkin' for itself. Too many folks missin', too much wild preachin' at meetin' of a Sunday, too much talk about that reef. I guess I done a bit by tellin' Selectman Mowry what I see from the cupola. They was a party one night as follered Obed's crowd out to the reef, and I heard shots betwixt the dories. Next's day Obed and 32 others was in jail, with everybody a-wonderin' just what was afoot and just what charge agin 'em could be got to holt. God, if anybody'd looked ahead, a couple of weeks later, when nothing had been throwed into the sea for that long. Zadok was showing signs of fright and exhaustion, and I let him keep silence for a while, though glancing apprehensively at my watch. The tide had turned and was coming in now, and the sound of the waves seemed to arouse him. That awful night, I seed 'em. I was up in the cupola, hordes of 'em, Swarms of them, all over the reef and swimming up the harbor into the Manuxet. God, what happened in the streets of Innsmouth that night? They rattled our door, but Pa wouldn't open. Then he clumb out the kitchen winder with his musket to find Selectman Mowry and see what he could do. My ounds of the dead and the dyin', shots and screams, shoutin' in Old Square and Town Square and New Church Green, jail throwed open, proclamation, treason, called it the plague when folks come in and found half our people missing. Nobody left but them as jine in with Obed and them things, or else keep quiet. Never heard o' my pa no more. The old man was panting and perspiring profusely. His grip on my shoulder tightened. Everything cleaned up in the morning, but they was traces. Obed, he kinder takes charge and says things is going to be changed. Others'll worship with us at meetin' time. And sartin houses has got to entertain guests. They wanted to mix like they done with the Kanakis, and he for one didn't feel bound to stop 'em. Far gone was Obed, just like a crazy man on the subject. He says they brung us fish and treasure, and shut of what they hankered arter. Nothing was to be different on the outside, only we was to keep shy of strangers if we knowed what was good for us. We all had to take the oath of Dagon, and later on they was second and third oaths that some of us took. Them as 'ud help special, 'ud get special rewards, gold and setch. No use balkin', for they was millions of 'em down there. They'd ruther not start rising and wiping out humankind, but if they was gave away and forced to, they could do a lot toward just that. Yield up enough sacrifices and savage knickknacks and harborage in the town when they wanted it, and they'd let well enough alone. All in the band of the faithful, order a Dagon, and the children should never die. But go back to the Mother Hydra and Father Dagon what we all come from Wanku. Cthulhu Fatan. Funglui Maglwanaf Cthulhu Relia Waganagal Fatan. Old Zadok began to moan now, and tears were coursing down his channeled cheeks into the depths of his beard. God, what I seen sank I was 15-year-old. Mene, Tekel, Aparsin. The folks as was missin', and them as kilt theirselves, them as told things in Arkham or Ipswich or sech places was all called crazy, like you're a-callin' me right now. But God, what I seen, they'd a-kilt me long ago for what I know. Only I'd took the fust and second oaths a Dagon off an Obed, so was protected unless in a jury of 'em proved I told things knowin' and deliberate. But I wouldn't take the third oath. I'd a died ruther 'n take that. It got wuss around Civil War time, when children born sanct 46 begun to grow up. Some of 'em, that is. I was afeard, never did no pryin' arter that awful night, and never see one of them close to in all my life. That is, never no full-blooded one. Barnabas Marsh, that runs the refinery now, is Obed's grandson by his fust wife, son of Onesiphorus, his eldest son, but his mother was another o' them as want never seed outdoors. Right now Barnabas is about changed, can't shed his eyes no more and is all out of shape. They say he still wears clothes, but he'll take to the water soon. The sound of the incoming tide was now very insistent, and little by little it seemed to change the old man's mood from maudlin tearfulness to watchful fear. He would pause now and then to renew those nervous glances over his shoulder or out toward the reef, and despite the wild absurdity of his tale, I could not help beginning to share his vague apprehensiveness. Zadok now grew shriller and seemed to be trying to whip up his courage with louder speech. "Hey, you, why don't you say something? How'd you like to be living in a town like this, with everything a-rotten and a-dyin', and boarded-up monsters crawling and bleatin' and barkin' and hoppin' around black cellars and attics every way you turn? Hey, Well, sir, let me tell ye that ain't the wust. Zadok was really screaming now, and the mad frenzy of his voice disturbed me more than I care to own. Curse ye, don't set there a-staring at me with them eyes. I tell Obed Marsh he's in hell and has got to stay thar. Heh heh, in hell, I says. Can't get me. I hain't done nothin' nor told nobody nothin'. Oh, you young feller? Well, even if I hain't told nobody nothin' yet, I'm a-goin' to now. You jest set still and listen to me, boy. This is what I ain't never told nobody. I says I didn't get to do no pryin' arter that night, but I found things out just the same. You want to know what the real horror is, hey? Wall, it's this. It ain't what them fish devils has done, but what they're a-going to do. They're a-bringin' things up out of where they come from into the town. Been doing it for years, and slackening up lately. Them houses north of the river betwixt Water and Main Streets is full of them devils and what they brung. And when they get ready, I say, when they get ready, ever hear tell of a Shoggoth? Hey, d'ye hear me? I tell ye I know what them things be. I seen 'em one night when... The hideous suddenness and inhuman frightfulness of the old man's shriek almost made me faint. His eyes, looking past me toward the malodorous sea, were positively starting from his head, while his face was a mask of fear worthy of Greek tragedy. His bony claw dug monstrously into my shoulder, and he made no motion as I turned my head to look at whatever he had glimpsed. There was nothing that I could see. Only the incoming tide, with perhaps one set of ripples more local than the long-flung line of breakers. But now Zadok was shaking me, and I turned back to watch the melting of that fear-frozen face into a chaos of twitching eyelids and mumbling gums. Presently, his voice came back, albeit as a trembling whisper. "Get out of here! Get out of here! They seen us! Get out for your life! Don't wait for nothing! They know now! Run for it! Quick! Out of this town!" Another heavy wave dashed against the loosening masonry of the bygone wharf and changed the mad ancient's whisper to another inhuman and blood-curdling scream. Before I could recover my scattered wits, he had relaxed his clutch on my shoulder and dashed wildly inland toward the street, reeling northward around the ruined warehouse wall. I glanced back at the sea, but there was nothing there. And when I reached Water Street and looked along it toward the north, there was no remaining trace of Zadok Allen.
As the ash settles, we leave the claustrophobic terror of the Gilman house behind, where our narrator barely escaped the baying mob by fleeing across the rain-swept rooftops. Yet the air remains heavy, for deep within the smoke, another mystery begins to take shape. Next time, we will part the fog to witness the desperate flight for survival through the decaying streets, leading to a revelation at the abandoned railway that will shatter sanity itself. If you seek to uncover the truth buried amidst the ruins, please like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. Join Whispers in the Ash, and don't miss a single whisper. I'll see you next time.